Thank you so much. Welcome back to the Dan Corder Show. South Africa is a movie, and you're at the watch party. Now, we need to talk about coalitions, because we are fully a coalition country now at national level, and so we need to learn how coalitions should work and how quickly things can go wrong when they don't. This issue is important for all of us in South Africa, and to show you how badly things can go, we're in Johannesburg tonight. The battle to be Johannesburg's mayor is kind of a lot like the TV series Game of Thrones. Over the last 8 years or seasons, mayors have been dethroned, mayors have died, former mayors have taken the throne back, there have been alliances and broken alliances and backstabbing and skullduggery, and just like in Game of Thrones, this last 8th season is weirdly dark and just not entertaining anymore. In fact, Joburg is much worse than the last season of Game of Thrones. At least the Game of Thrones final season got 2 out of 5 stars on Rotten Tomatoes. I suspect Joburg residents would give Joburg politicians a flat 0 out of 5 at best. In the last 6 years, since 2019, Joburg has had 10 mayors, depending on how you count. The list on the queue is crazy. I'm going to try to read it all. Herman Mashaba, Jeff Makubo, Jolie Di Matongo, Mpo Moruane, Mpo Palatse, Dada Morero, Mpo Palatse again, Tapelo Ahmad, Kabelo Gwamanda, and now last Friday, Dada Morero again. To put it into perspective, there have been more Joburg mayorships in 2019 than there have been winners of Love Island in the same period. Like, that's so many people. And for a body that has the very serious job of running the most economically, socially, culturally, and politically influential city in South Africa, the politics has often gotten really, it's just silly. Like when the DA's Mpho Palatse was ousted as mayor and then reinstated as mayor 26 days later by a court order, and got back to work on her first day to discover that she was locked out of her office because the previous occupants had changed the locks. They trolled the mayor of Johannesburg. They changed her locks to lock her out on the first day. That's pretty silly and very weird at a level of power of Joburg politics. And last May, it got even sillier, but in like a serious, silly kind of way. The Joburg Council needed to elect a new mayor. So they had a council sitting on a Tuesday to do exactly that. Every sitting of council, by the way, every time they meet, costs the taxpayer R500,000. Don't know where the money goes at those meetings. Judging by some of our politicians' waistlines, it's probably all to catering, but I can't confirm that. So the meeting started at 10 a.m. They were there to elect a mayor, right? Immediately, the EFF asked for a caucus, which is basically when political parties call for a break so they can go off and chat amongst themselves, strategize, and usually politicians caucus when something happens in a meeting that they want to discuss how to respond to, right? They're responding to new happenings. But at this meeting, nothing had happened yet. The EFF just called for a caucus straight away. I'm guessing they hadn't done their homework at home. They needed to chat about what they were going to do. The request was granted. So that's 10 a.m. The meeting paused for caucusing. They came back at 11. The ANC then immediately called for a 3-hour caucus break. That was granted. Then it was 2 p.m. and the meeting broke for lunch. Lunch was 90 minutes. They came back at 3:30 and straight away a bunch of minor parties also requested a caucus break. And that was also granted. And when they came back, the day was over. It was 5. They needed to beat traffic. The meeting was adjourned. Whole day, just caucus and lunch. No mayor for Joburg, R500,000 spent. Reportedly, at least the catering was good. And I think this meeting really sums up the disconnect between Joburg's politicians and its people. Because over the last decade, the politicians have been screwing around in Joburg and the people have been suffering. Joburg is a divided city. Many political parties have support, but no one party has enough to rule on its own. So they've been using coalitions to form ruling governments. And they've been doing it all very, very badly. Over and over again, coalitions have collapsed as parties fight and walk away and choose to switch allegiances. And every time a coalition collapses, the functions of the municipality's executive grind to a halt, while parties haggle to make a new coalition to appoint a new mayor. And then that mayor needs to form the mayoral committee from politicians representing different parties in the coalition. And then those members of the new mayoral committee, the MMCs, have to get to know their new departments and get to work. New mayors means new visions and new priorities. New MMCs often mean paused, slowed, or even cancelled local government department projects when they replace them with new ones. And when this churn keeps happening over and over, towns and cities suffer. That whole process I just described has happened on average every 8 to 9 months in Johannesburg since the end of 2019. And Johannesburg has suffered serious decay and collapsing services. It's like the City of Gold's government has the anti-Midas touch. Everything it goes near turns to shit, not gold. Our water, electricity, and sanitation systems are crumbling. Our roads are literally crumbling. Our streets aren't safe. Whole areas of the city are completely unpoliced. Departments that should be helping weak and vulnerable people are struggling to get anything done. There's tons of corruption and also obviously fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And that is because of the choices that the city's political class has made. And in recent years, guys, it's got absurd. The ANC and the EFF agreed to rule together in Joburg, but both wanted one of their own to be mayor, right? And neither was accepting a mayor from the other party. So they decided to install a waste man puppet mayor from a tiny political party to do their bidding. And for that, they went to Al Jamar, a tiny political party that got less votes than you need to get top 10 on Idols. Al Jamar, that's actually true. Al Jamar represents some Muslim voters in Johannesburg, and that has secured them just a few seats in local government. They have no real power. So Al Jamar was thrilled to get a mayor, even a powerless one who existed solely on the whims of the ANC and the EFF. And that's how we got Tapelo Ahmad, a man whose best moment as Joburg mayor was when he was appointed and he tried to jump on two guys' shoulders and he failed to get all the way up. And then he just hung on, grinning for dear life for a while. That is exactly how his entire mayorship went. He couldn't do anything and just hung on as long as he could, grinning for dear life. Tapelo Ahmad was so clearly useless and inept that the ANC and the EFF eventually got so embarrassed by his incompetence that they got rid of him. They sent their own puppet mayor back to Sesame Street. But no worries, because on Sesame Street, Al Jamar had another puppet mayor to give them. And that's how we got Kabelo Gwamanda, a man who Al Jamar said had a tertiary diploma in business, which he does not have, but who still allegedly ran a business scamming people out of money by offering funeral insurance and then disappearing when anybody died and needed a funeral. He was the mayor of Johannesburg. And Gwamanda has been a shocking mayor. Everything has gotten worse under his mayorship. When the most disastrous Joburg building fire in generations happened, Gwamanda was useless, and the ANC stepped in to provide leadership. Gwamanda was equally useless in response to when Bree Street literally blew up. It blew up. It exploded. By the way, Bree Street is still exploded today. It still looks like Gotham City after Batman had one too many drinks at Groove. Like, it is rubbish. Eventually, Gwamanda, the puppet mayor, was also forced back to Sesame Street, and that's what started the process that has led to the ANC's Dada Morero becoming mayor for the second time with broad support from a weird coalition that includes somehow the EFF and Action SA. Action SA, the party that swore they would not work with the ANC in the next 300 years, and then helped elect the ANC's Dada Morero. Dada Morero's first try as mayor of Johannesburg lasted 26 days. Now, if that's ringing a bell from earlier on in this show, that's because that's how long Mpho Phalatse was out of power before she was reinstated as mayor by the court and returned to office to find herself locked out of her office. That was new Mayor Dada Morero's first time, locking the new mayor out of their office. I'm not saying he did it, I'm just saying he was there. At this point, I, as a Joburger, don't even care who is mayor. I don't care which party, I just want the nonsense to stop. I just want the same people to be in office for a while so they can do the work they're supposed to do for the city and we can hold them accountable if they don't. The wild thing is that even if Mayor Morero holds together this coalition, he still won't have much time on the job because local government elections are coming in like 2026. That's not right now, but that is now. And that's where we come in. Because I know that so often we South Africans can feel hopeless. We can feel powerless in the face of this endless political fuff show. But there's something we can do, and that's vote in local government elections. Now, I know you're sick and tired of being told to vote. I know you're sick of it. And I think most people do now understand why it's important to vote nationally. But way fewer people vote in local government elections. And in many ways, those local elections are just as important, because your local representatives can be the difference between your neighborhood having working streetlights or not, having roads or a South African pothole award. And your local government can be the difference between you having safe streets or not. Your day-to-day life is more affected by local government politics than national government politics. We need to know what our local government politicians are getting up to. We need to hold them accountable, and one of the best ways to do that is to vote. And if you're watching this thinking, thank God I don't live in Johannesburg, I get it. But I hope you realize that the mess and damage of bad coalitions and constant churn can happen anywhere. The big thing that we as a country need to do is make political parties understand that we will reward them with votes for making coalitions work, not for collapsing and walking away from them. In the last few years, it seems as though political parties have thought that we'll reward them for abandoning coalition governments. That's what they've been doing a lot. But we need to make them understand that we'd far rather have stable, imperfect coalitions than constant mess. Because when coalitions collapse, the politicians don't suffer, they have catering. We suffer. So that's our show. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can catch all of our episodes again for free on enca.com, and we'll be back on Monday for the next episode of The Dan Quarter Show. Thank you so much for being here. Good night and have a great week.